With a Ryzen AI HX 370, 2.5K OLED display, and an RTX GPU, this is turning out to be my favorite 16-inch laptop of 2024. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new ASUS ROG Zephyrus G16 Ryzen AI Edition. So, a few months back, they actually released a very similar laptop, but it was powered by an Intel Core CPU. And with that, it did put down some really good performance, but this is the one I was most excited about. Because with this, we get that new AMD Ryzen AI HX 370. They've also left the slash lighting like we saw on the previous G16 with that Intel chip, something I've actually grown used to. I actually kind of like the look of it. And it's no doubt that ASUS has been putting out some really great laptops, especially with these new Ryzen AI chips. Having those OLED displays is something that I love seeing here, and with this, we get that 16-inch Nubula 2.5K display, and it is an absolutely beautiful display. Massive trackpad along with their chiclet style RGB backlit keyboard. It's only a single zone, but it is fully customizable through Armory Crate. But the main claim to fame here for me is the display. These are some of the best on the market in my opinion. Up to 240 Hz, 0.2 millisecond response time, a 1,000:1 contrast ratio. We get some very vibrant colors and some super deep blacks, up to 500 nits of brightness. It's 100% DCI-P3, supports display HDR500, Nvidia G-Sync, and Dolby Vision. When it comes to I/O on the new G16, over here on the left-hand side, we've got that ASUS Slim Power Jack. It does come with a 200-watt power supply, full-size HDMI 2.1, a USB 4 Type-C port that supports DisplayPort 1.4, and it will offer power delivery 3.0, so up to 100 watts, 20 volts at 5 amps, one full-size USB 3.2 Gen 2 port, and a 3.5mm audio jack. Over on the right-hand side, full-size SD card reader, and it is an SD 7.0 reader, another full-size USB 3.2 port, and USB 3.2 Type-C. Also supports Display Out. Okay, so at the time of making this video, I've had about 4 days to mess around with this laptop. I love the overall design. As you can see, we've got an absolutely massive trackpad. This whole laptop is constructed of aviation aluminum alloy using a 12-step manufacturing process. They've also added a 6-speaker sound system with the new G16, and it's got dual side woofers. This thing does put out some bass. It's pretty awesome how loud this thing can get. In terms of connectivity, with these thinner laptops, this is only coming in at 0.59 inches thick. It doesn't have any kind of Ethernet built in, but we do have Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4. And with the included 200-watt charger, we can go from 0 to 50% in 30 minutes on this 90-watt-hour battery. And of course, when it comes to the overall specs, like I mentioned, this is utilizing the new AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX 370. Based on Zen 5, we've got 12 cores, 24 threads, a base clock of 2 GHz, and a boost up to 5.1. One of my favorite chips on the market right now, and with this, we've got that AMD XDNA NPU up to 50 TOPS of AI performance, 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5, non-user upgradable, but it's running at 7500 MHz. You can also opt to get this with 16, so it'll come in a little cheaper, but remember, you can't upgrade. The GPU is an Nvidia Geforce RTX 4070 laptop variant with 8 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM, and this will boost up to 105 watts, so we can get some great performance out of this laptop GPU. Storage is handled by a 1TB M.2 NVMe SSD, and it is a PCIe 4.0 SSD. We've got a 240 Hz 16-inch 2.5K Nubula OLED display, Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.4, 90-watt-hour battery, and this is only coming in at 4.08 pounds. To keep everything nice and chilly, they've implemented a new cooling system. It's actually a tri-fan cooling system, so we've got 3 fans in this unit, but on the iGPU in silent mode, this thing can cut the fans off completely, 0 dB, and I've actually gamed with Hades 2 just with the fans completely off, never hit thermal throttle with it. It's using their 2nd-gen ArcFlow fans, along with liquid metal and their new heat pipe system. Plus, we've got a dust filtration system in the bottom of the unit. So far, performance on this laptop has been top-notch, and it really comes down to that new Ryzen AI 9 HX 370. 32 gigs of DDR5 at 7500 MHz, and of course, we've got that RTX 4070 laptop variant with 8 gigs of VRAM. A couple things I wanted to show you here to get the maximum performance out of this laptop, and first up, we've got Armory Crate. Just going right into it, you can see we've got our power profiles, Windows, silent, performance. Usually when, gaming, I'm in performance. We've also got a turbo mode, which is going to take it up a notch, and manual mode. In manual mode, we can take the TDP all the way up to 80 watts on this HX 370. We've also got fan adjustment. GPU can also be clocked up by 200 megahertz on the core clock, 300 megahertz on the memory clock, and we can choose our TGP, or our total graphics power. Level 1, 55, level 2, 60, level 3, 65, 75, and of course 85 at level 5, plus that dynamic boost bringing it up to around 105 watts for this RTX 4070. And if you're looking to get the maximum performance out of this, this is definitely going to be where it's at, but turbo mode for most people is really going to get you by. Moving down a bit to our device, that slash lighting can be fully controlled on the back of the laptop. We can also adjust the RGB on the keyboard, but remember, it's just a single zone. So lighting is going to be our keyboard. Slash lighting gives us a little demo here, and we've got a few to choose from. So sonic match, bounce, static, dark, we can turn it completely off. So when it comes down to it, everything on this G16 can be controlled through Armoury Crate. And with the newer releases of Armoury Crate, we've also got an on-screen resource monitor. This is also fully adjustable. You can go to manual mode, got a level 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll just go to level 4. If we turn on the real-time monitor, it's going to give us an on-screen readout. So this will overlay right on top of our games. That way you really don't have to mess around with any third-party applications. For me, I'm in manual just to give me the basics here. We've got our GPU, clock, temperature, power, same thing with the CPU, and of course our FPS with a graph. Actually, been using this quite a bit with the newer updates on Armoury Crate. But now it's time to see how this thing really performs, and the first thing we're going to be taking a look at are some benchmarks, then we'll move over to some real-world gaming. Keep in mind, we will be in turbo mode from Armoury Crate, and when it comes to Geekbench 6, this Ryzen Ai HX 370 really puts it down. Single core, 2,901. Multi-core, 15,379. These are definitely some of my favorite chips on the market right now. Moving over to some GPU benchmarks, we've got that RTX 4070 laptop variant. Steel Nomad, 2,630. Firestrike, 27,278. And of course, we had to run Time Spy here with a respectable 12,125. Since we've got that dynamic boost that goes up to around 105 watts with the laptop variant of this 4070, we're seeing some great synthetic scores here. But now we need to see how this thing handles gaming, and the first one we've got here is Forza Motorsport. This is one that I personally haven't tested in a while. We're at 2560 by 1600 Ultra DLSS set to quality. This is one of those games that is a little all over the place if you don't have VSync on, and we're seeing anywhere from 71 up to 109 FPS with this, on average 86. I wanted to throw at least one fighting game in here, so we went with Mortal Kombat 1, 2560, 1600, and I knew we weren't going to have any issues at Ultra, even with no DLSS here. I've got a feeling that this whole setup here, plugged into a 4K monitor, would be able to run this just fine at that resolution. Starfield, 2560, 1600, high with DLSS set to balance. So we're in a city right now, and we're actually seeing an average of around 81. Not too bad, and Bethesda has put out some really great performance updates, but this game still isn't perfect. If we're out doing planet exploration, we're seeing an average of around 98. But overall, the new G16 is handling this game just fine. Next up, we've got the built-in benchmark for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, 1440p Ultra DLSS set to balance. And at these higher resolutions, even with that 4070, remember it's a laptop variant, our 1% low was still right there at around 58, but our average was 124. And finally, for the dedicated GPU here, we've got Cyberpunk 2077, 2560 by 1600, Ultra DLSS is set to auto, and I knew we'd be able to run this really well. Remember, we've still got access to frame generation, so if you're looking for a much higher frame rate, you can always enable it. But with this, we saw an average of 83 FPS. There was one more type of gaming that I wanted to test, and when it comes down to it, we've actually got a pretty powerful iGPU. This is the new Radeon 890M, along with that Ryzen Ai HX 370. So we've got 16 CUs, And this is now based on RDNA 3.5. Really, what I wanted to see here was just what kind of power draw we're pulling while gaming on that iGPU, because if you're out and about and you don't have access to wall power, you might still want to get some gaming out of the way. And at 1080p low settings with most of the stuff that I've tested on the 890M, it actually runs pretty well. So on the iGPU alone, screen set to 1200p, silent mode from Armory Crate, 50% screen brightness, 60 hertz refresh rate. Now this is important. If you want to run it 240, it's definitely going to burn more power. We've got a 90 watt hour battery with the new G16. And with Hades 2 on that iGPU, we were pulling an average of around 27 watts in total from the battery, giving us around 3 hours and 20 minutes of runtime playing a game like that. And when it comes to web browsing, video playback, around 10 hours and 28 minutes out of this 90 watt hour battery, which isn't bad. Now, going over to that dedicated GPU, you're not going to see a lot of battery life out of it. But in a pinch, when you don't have a wall outlet, you can actually see some pretty good runtime out of this thing on the iGPU. Ever since Asus redesigned the G16 this year with that all-metal design, I've been a huge fan of it. With this, we get a really nice chiclet-style backlit RGB keyboard, huge trackpad, but my favorite thing here has to be that Nebula display. It is absolutely beautiful, up to 240 hertz. And with the addition of the new Ryzen AI CPU here, I think it's taken the G16 to a whole new level. This is definitely one of my favorite 16-inch laptops, and overall, I think we're seeing some great performance, awesome battery life on that iGPU, and since the new G16 is paired up with an RTX 4070, we can really game at those higher refresh rates and higher resolutions on this laptop. But that's going to wrap it up for my first look at the 2024 ROG Zephyrus G16 Ryzen AI Edition. If you're interested in learning a little more, I will leave some links down below, and if there's anything else you want to see running on this laptop, anything tested at all, let me know in the comments. That's it for this one. Like always, thanks for watching.